All right. Good afternoon. We're going to continue with our media availability here over the next hour or so with several NASCAR Cup Series drivers. We have now been joined by Chris Bueshcer, who's the driver of the number 17 Ford for RFK Racing. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. You're also the defending race winner, but a little bit different position this year than you were in last year when you won that race. Obviously, a win would mean a lot tomorrow night, but just tell us a little bit about going into this race as the defending race winner, but also just kind of what a difference a year makes as well.
Yeah, definitely. A lot's changed in a pretty short period of time, but certainly, this time last year we had some really good things happening at RFK. We found a lot of momentum. We'd had a handful of opportunities to win races and came up a little short, and ultimately didn't have the consistency to make the playoffs, and ended up not in the best place, not where we had our goals set at the beginning of the year to be coming into this race. But this has been a track that's always been really good for me, for RFK. I've always had really strong chances to do great things here. Had one kind of stuck in the back of my mind. Scott and I actually lost together here on a green-white checker back on the Xfinity days, and had basically just had a fuel stutter late in a race, and ended up costing us a win on that day. So the Cup win was, I won't say bittersweet, but certainly made up for a lot of what we felt like we had lost way back when together, and was really the highlight of our year last season. Like I said, we had a lot of good things happening, and certainly hit our stride at a good time, similar to this year. But the Bristol win was big for us. So we come into it this time. Obviously, this is been circled for us. It's my favorite racetrack. Place I love to come. I love the night race here. Love concrete races here. So I'm obviously a fan of recent news, and like that we're heading into what I would think of it as one of our best tracks for a playoff elimination race. Especially knowing what we had last time here, knowing we're in an okay spot in the point side of things, and in the playoffs. Definitely didn't need our issue at the very end of last week's race, and that put us way behind where we wanted to be coming to this race. But excited for it, and again, it's my favorite racetrack. I know we're going to have a fast BuildSubmarines.com Ford Mustang, and that gives me a lot of confidence coming in. Aside from the fact that we were able to win this one last year.
All right, we'll now go to questions from the media. If you have a question, raise your hand. We'll work to get a microphone to you. We'll start with Lee.
Lee Spencer, CatchFence.com. Curious, what gives you more confidence, knowing that you won at Daytona, or knowing you have somebody to push you like Brad Keselowski?
Which, comparing the two, I think it's more about the teammates, and having Brad behind us there, and knowing what we've talked about doing, what we've studied, and what we've looked to do to finish these races. Certainly that's that's been a massive part of speedway racing in general for us. So the Daytona win in itself is huge, but I certainly feel like there's a whole lot more to lean on in the fact of the fact of how well our teams are working together to make things happen, and to get those wins. We've been really close to a lot of those speedway races, so we had the confidence that we had speed there, but the execution and the working together, and knowing that we're going to be a factor in a lot of these things, that's more so what makes you excited going into them.
That being said, does that give you less trepidation going into Talladega in the next round?
A little bit, yeah. I haven't. Super speedway racing isn't my favorite. I don't necessarily mind it, but it's just not really at the top of my list. Now, I say that, and it's been very good to us, but it also talked about trying to complete that last 2% of those speedway races has been very frustrating at times. And we've talked a lot about, if you're consistently there, the right opportunity will be there, and you will be able to get the job done. And we're finally able to get one of those. But also realize how difficult it is to do that consistently. Now, we've watched certain teammates go out there and make it work, and we've watched some Penske teammates work really well together, Speedway Racing, and it's certainly been something that we've talked about, Brad, myself, and all of our teams. So when we go to Talladega, we know we're gonna find each other. We know we're gonna have fast Mustangs, and just control what we can. But know that if we can do that, we can stay out of some of the chaos. That we'll have an opportunity to win the race, and we will work hard together to make that happen for one or both of us.
All right. Additional questions for Chris? Okay.
Dustin Albino, J-Ski. Chris, with what happened last week at Kansas, obviously put you just 13 points above. How much will you want to know how the drivers you're racing are tomorrow, how they're doing?
Yeah, I'm torn on this because with 10 laps to go last week, I'd have told you I didn't want to hear a thing about it. And obviously couldn't have timed out really any worse for us to have that issue and have absolutely, an overtime attempt to try and make up laps and positions, and ultimately forfeited probably 15 points. Just figure on it, and that sucks. Like, there's no way around that, and would have definitely come in here with a whole different feeling. So put all of that aside, and like I talked about a second ago, come into Bristol, being my favorite racetrack, knowing that our cars are always competitive here, that kind of gets rid of everything and puts you in a really good spot. And then you watch the race back, and you watch 10, 12 tires go down. You watch steering rack issues, stuff that one of our cars, the 6 experienced tire, go down. Not so much on the other issues, but yeah, there's a lot riding on this race, and quite a few unknowns, stuff that we really haven't talked about in a long time, and I kind of thought we were over before Kansas. Honestly, we wouldn't have worried about it much at all, but it's got to be on your mind, got to know. The thing is, there's just not much you can do about it here. There's no room to let up. There's no 85% here. You'll get run over. You got to go out there and run 100%. We need to go out. We have to have a good practice. We need to qualify well. We need to race up front, grab stage points early. Hopefully that just comes to us. That we're not having to do anything tricky to try and do that or outplay anybody. Hopefully we're just up front to where we can grab those stage points early and build a cushion back up to where we don't have to have those conversations. But certainly need to be aware of cars that are racing. If anybody else has issues, you need to race smart about it and have some awareness. So that was a really long way to say, I want some info on it. I want a lot more when something significant's happening. If it's a race where you're not having any issues, you're not having accidents, at that point you just had to race your race 100% and hope it's enough. And honestly, I kind of hope that's the way it plays out, because you don't want to have to get into the weeds of all the other little stuff. But you're going to take more info than before by a pretty good amount.
All right, Jay.
Jay Pennell with Racing America. I think going into the playoffs, a lot of the talk was, the resurgence of RFK and how well you guys have been running. But I think a lot of people overlook the fact that you've raced for a championship and won a championship. I know 2015 was a long time ago, but is there anything that you can take from that championship effort back then that you're applying to this year in your efforts?
It was different. That was the last year before playoffs on the Xfinity side, and it was the most typical approach to winning a championship. Was, look, Daytona in February mattered all the way to the very end, and we worked to win races and be very consistent. We worked to minimize bad days, and that came all the way down to the end of the year, where I think our number was 13th, no matter what the 9 car did. I believe it was 13, and I remember getting yelled at that race for trying to pass 3 wide down the backstretch at Homestead for 9th or 11th, something like that. Getting yelled at by the same 2 people that are in my ear nowadays, and getting yelled at for not needing to race those cars, to not needing those positions, that the 9 car was not leading the race, was not in contention for the win, that, our number was 20th or something like that, and I did not need to be making the mistakes I was. Perceived mistakes. So I remember that. I don't think it's the same now, though. I don't think you approach it very similar to that championship or the ARCA championship even. Obviously that one's a little different, but it's a lot different when we have these 3 race rounds and it's just rapid fire. You're not so much working off of 3 months ago. It's very much in the moment. So if the circumstances come up like we just mentioned, that a couple wrecks, couple failures, something like that, start talking about some of those things. Start saying, look, we need to gain 8 more points today, and that'll be fine. Or look, we got to figure out how to win this thing.
All right, Davey.
Davey Siegel with Sirius XM. Chris, when you came in, you said this is your favorite place. I heard earlier this week you kind of compared winning last year here to almost as big, if not as big, as the Daytona 500. Where does that come from? Why is this place held in such of a high regard for you?
Yeah, I mean, it is to me comparable. I think back to watching this race growing up. This was the one wanted to sit down and pay the most attention to. When we were Xfinity racing, this was the one race would stay after and go, find a empty seat up there in turn 3 and try and sit down and watch the Cup race. It's a track that just feel like there's always movement here, that there's always a hustle, that there's no breather, and that I also think that from a racing standpoint, this brings in the very fundamentals of racing. This brings in short track racing, brings in aggression, but smarts into it. It brings in mechanical, basic race car technology versus being so far caught up in some of the aero and all the other things that are way above my head anyway, and it breaks it back down to basics, and in a lot of ways. Now you'll never get to the simplicity of racing 20 years ago, but it certainly just hits a little different for me, and I don't know, the Bristol Night Race to me is it's top of my bucket list. So to get that one first was certainly awesome. Now we got to get another one and get a couple more races along the way.
All right. Any final questions for Chris? Any final questions in the press box? All right, Chris. Best of luck tomorrow night.